No two guys in this world should play golf the same way, in my personal opinion. And you have to find what works for you. You have to do it confidently. You have to do it consistently, and just own it and do it. It's an incredible thing to watch, seeing guys who can be different and confident and successful with it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the debut episode of The Forthy Show. I'm your host, Joshua Forsyth. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about the Stanley Cup Finals. We're going to talk about the NHL Offseason. We will move over to the PGA and talk about this past week's US Open. We will talk about the first 2 weeks of the NFL season as well. Starting with the NHL Playoffs, we are going to be talking about the Stanley Cup Final Series between the Dallas Stars and the Tampa Bay Lightning. The series is currently tied 1-1, and I think one of the biggest pieces so far that we've noticed is the goaltending. And not just through this series, but the entire playoffs. With Dallas Stars coming through the Vegas Golden Knights, and you saw that the biggest issue for the Golden Knights was scoring on Hudobin. An interesting point from Game 1 of the Finals was Dallas deployed a very similar strategy that the Knights had been deploying, and basically just kind of setting up shop and allowing the goalie to see shots and make saves. I don't know if that's going to be a fun series for Hudobin if that continues to be the case. Dallas doesn't have quite the same firepower that Tampa Bay has, but we'll see how that plays out. I know that the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to try and have things a little bit more opened up throughout the series, try to use their speed and use their power play to their advantage. They definitely have more offensive firepower, especially if Steven Stamkos can come back in and help them out there. One of the interesting things so far would be the fact that Tyler Seguin only has 8 points right now in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and 2 of them being goals. If you look at their leading scorers right now, it's led by 2 different defensemen of Miro Heiskanen and John Klingberg. Their top forward would be Jamie Benn with 18 points. If you would have told me that the Dallas Stars were going to be in the Stanley Cup Finals and Tyler Seguin had 2 goals and only 8 points, I would have called you crazy. I don't know where they would have got their scoring from. I wouldn't have had a clue. And it seems like it's just been a scoring by committee type team. You look a little bit more towards the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they're a little bit more top heavy, but they still have some really good depth scoring as well. It's going to be a huge battle between the goaltenders, as I talked about, but it's also going to be a battle between Heiskanen and Hedman. Both players are just playing out of this world right now. And if you were to ask me who's going to be the Conn Smythe winner, I would pick one of those 2 defensemen depending on which team won the cup. As much as Hudobin has been unreal for Dallas, it's just incredible to watch what Heiskanen does with the puck. He's able to skate the puck out of the zone, he's able to settle it down, he's able to make that first breakout pass, and then he's also able to gain the zone and don't sell his defensive game short either. He's very active with his stick, he's very good. Hedman plays a little bit different of a style. He's not as mobile, still able to move up and down the ice quite well, but doesn't use his skating to the same advantages that Heiskanen does. And boy, I tell you, he's heavy on everything. His shot is heavy. He plays the body well, blocks shots, gets into position and doesn't let anybody move him out of position. It's incredible to watch what they're doing there. Personally, I have Tampa Bay winning this series in 7 games. I think it's going to be close the whole way. I just think that Dallas has a bit more of a grit to their game, and they'll be able to win some of the closer games, the tight, low-scoring games. I believe that Tampa's going to be able to open up some of the games, not all the time, but at least there's going to be those, a 3-minute span where they have 2 goals and create chances. And eventually that's going to catch up to Dallas, and Tampa Bay will win in 7 games. Moving over to the offseason, I'm honestly mostly intrigued by the fact that Alex Pietrangelo is now apparently going to be on the free agent market. Having some contract talks break down with St. Louis this past week, it's going to be one of the major facts of this offseason, I think, to see where he ends up. He has been their captain for the past few seasons, and if you look through his entire career, he's usually around a 20 to 30 minute penalty minute guy. He plays 25 to 30 minutes a game. He's only been a minus player once in his entire career, and even that was a -2. He's usually anywhere between 40 to 55 points. And still, I mean, he's only 30 years old. He'll be 31 in January, which potentially when the season is going to be starting. And obviously, he's got that cup-winning experience as well. I think there's going to be some teams that are closer to the cap that are going to try and maneuver some pieces and maybe try and acquire him in free agency. I think he's going to go to a contending team, or a team that he feels may be contending soon, maybe 1 or 2 pieces away. I could see Edmonton trying to clear enough cap. They are currently sitting with 34 players signed and just over 10 million in space. So it's workable, but maybe have to move someone out. It's going to be an interesting one to keep your eye on. I really feel like he's going to go to a contending team. I've seen people come up with the fact that he may go to Ottawa. He is an Ontario player, or an Ontario born. I definitely understand that, and you can definitely see different guys are going to have certain things that are higher up. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of pitches would be thrown at him as well. Are you going to pitch towards the family side? Are you going to pitch towards the money side? Are you going to pitch towards winning, or those kinds of ideas as well? He's a guy that seems to be family first, but also wants to win. I don't know if money's going to be the biggest issue for him, but it's always important. We all know that. Talking a little bit about the awards from this past season and some of the things that are coming out now. One of the first ones I want to talk to you about is Makar winning the Calder Trophy, and congratulations to him. It's well deserved. A huge debate on the Western Conference here about whether it was going to be Hughes or Makar. Personally, I would have been happy with either one. Both amazing players, similar games. They love to be able to quarterback the power play, and it was kind of interesting to see the dynamic of both of them being in the playoffs and both of them playing well, continuing on into the playoffs. An interesting note for me was, with the break in the season, you do generally see a little bit of a slowdown with rookies, and when we didn't really see that because they got to take that break, pause, refresh a bit. Quinn Hughes talked about putting on some weight and being able to compete more at an NHL level because he knew where he needed to get his body to. It was basically starting the second season for them when the playoffs started. And so that was an interesting dynamic as well. It didn't factor into the voting, nor should it. But it was an interesting thing to see, which we wouldn't normally see. Makar is going to be a stud defenseman for the Colorado Avalanche for years to come, and they've desperately needed one for a few seasons now, and it's good to see them now starting to build, again from within, quite a good stable of young defensemen. They have some more coming up soon. Vancouver, again, I don't think they've ever had a defenseman quite like Hughes. Their leader in pretty much every stat category as a defenseman is going to be Alex Edler. Never been the offensive quarterback per se. He's always had a heck of a shot and always had a decent breakout pass. But the things that you see Hughes do, nobody's ever done in Vancouver, especially as a defenseman. Going over to the Norris, seeing Roman Josi win it, and I think the biggest competition was going to be John Carlson this year. They came down to number 1 and number 2 in voting again. Carlson definitely has the offensive side of things, and especially early on in the season was running away with the points race. And to see a guy like Roman Josi, where he's playing on a bit more of a balanced defensive core, where they have quite a few solid defensemen, and yet to still see him lead in so many categories and continual, he's the guy that they throw out there in every situation. It's very impressive, and he's one of my favorite defensemen to watch in the league. For obvious reason, he's very talented, and an interesting thing to see is how many of these young defensemen are now getting votes for Norris trophies as well. A player like Heiskanen got some votes. Even Makar and Hughes, you saw them get some 4th and 5th place votes as well. So definitely trending towards the youth side of things. We didn't see the guys quite like Shea Weber or Zdeno Chara. Chara especially being at the twilight of his career. You're going to start to see some new faces come in and win some of those awards, and that's refreshing to see as well. Going over to the Hart Trophy, and one of my favorite debates every offseason is going to be the Hart Trophy or the Lindsay. And it's quite often going to the same player lately, which I think is a mistake. And personally, with the media that votes for the Hart Trophy and the players vote for the Ted Lindsay, and one of the biggest things is I think the media has lost focus on what the Hart Trophy actually is when you're voting for it. And it is the fact that you are voting for the most valuable player. And the Ted Lindsay Award is the most outstanding player. These to me are not mutually exclusive. They are not, they're definitely going to go to the same type of a player, but not necessarily the same player every season. To me, if you were to look at the best players in the NHL, you're going to look at your Connor McDavids, you're going to look at your Leon Draisaitl's, you're going to look at your Nikita Kucherov, and players of that ilk. You could even talk about Pasternak in Boston. But the thing that I really like to see more of is a player who, if you take him off of that team is nowhere near where they finished off in the standings. A player like Nathan McKinnon on Colorado, a player especially like Jack Eichel in Buffalo. Both of those players, to me, if you were to take them off the team, you would not see that team succeed nearly as often as what you do. And not just the on-ice play, especially that, but not just that, but the culture that they are continually growing within those organizations. Moving over to talk about the PGA and the US Open from this past week, one of the interesting things this week would be playing the tournament at Winged Foot. As most of you know from 2006, one of the biggest storylines was Phil Mickelson going into the last hole with the lead, and well, it's one of the most famous, let's say, chokes in golf history. He wasn't able to bring it home, and one of the things going into the week was basically talking to Phil Mickelson, seeing how he was going into it, and he says himself, well, there's not a lot of things he remembers about that tournament other than going up the 18th hole, and let's say a bit of a dog's breakfast on that one. One of the things with the US Open has always been who's going to be the most consistent off the tee, who's going to be able to stay out of the rough, and again, making those clutch 6-foot putts, whether it be for birdie, for par, and a lot of them even times for bogey. It's one of the reasons why Tiger Woods has been one of the best US Open performers, is the fact that he's made more of those 6-foot putts than anyone in history. Going into this week, it was looking like it was going to be a showdown between some of the top players in golf. We saw, Dustin Johnson coming off a incredible performance through the entire FedEx Cup playoffs. We saw a whole bunch of the top players in the world, Justin Thomas, Jon Rahm, Rory McIlroy, starting to find their games. And it was going to be, right off the bat, everyone knew that there's going to be some big names that are playing well going into this tournament. What we didn't see coming was the fact that all of the bombers suddenly seemed to have an advantage. It's not how Winged Foot has normally played. It's not how the US Open has normally played. However, you're starting to see a lot of these guys not only hit the ball a absolute ton, but be able to do it fairly accurately and be able to miss it in places where they feel that they can still attack the course. And nobody better right now at playing his own game than Bryson Dechambeau, who came out with a win. If you start to look at some of the stats from this tournament, like shots gained off the tee, you saw some very familiar names there, where Rory McIlroy leads the way, Bryson comes in second, Bubba Watson third, and even Jon Rahm is coming in at fifth. Matthew Wolff, who had an amazing performance, finishing second, he finished in ninth in this. So a lot of big names, a lot of big hitters are coming in shots gained off the tee in the top 10. If you look at the shots gained going into the greens, again, right at the top, Bryson DeChambeau. Matthew Wolff, fourth. Dustin Johnson was second, but when he was struggling off the tee, same with Tony Finau, a little bit more, and someone who I expected a little bit more from in this tournament as well. And Bubba Watson sitting there at ninth. So a couple of big things in there. Just consistently, Bryson DeChambeau, number one in shots gained going into the greens, number two shots gained off the tee box. And if I look over at what he did on shots gained for putting as well, I believe he was 18th. So you see fairly consistently across the board, he had a very, very good week, and one of the biggest things that propelled him to that championship. A couple of different things for who I thought maybe missed an opportunity would be Patrick Reed. He had the lead after 2 days. It was in the final pairing with DeChambeau going into day 3. He put the ball very well. He hit greens like he was 8th in shots gained going into the greens. But if you look at the driving statistics, for players who made the cut, he was 58th. And so you talk about, a missed opportunity. You fix one club in your bag, and all of a sudden you're sitting there right near the top, if not at the top. And I mean, he still had a good week without that. Another player would be Bubba Watson, as I mentioned earlier, where he was good off the tee, good going into the greens, and then if you look at where he finished putting, was 60th out of 61 players. And again, it's one club out of your bag. Tony Finau, again, sitting there 51st on putting. Two guys who hit the ball a mile and were still able to find their way to the greens quite well, and then couldn't find a way to get the ball in the hole. And as we all know, that's the entire object of the game. We had an interesting moment on Saturday where Danny Lee had a six putt from about 4 feet on the 18th green and finished his round and basically said, "That's it. I'm packing it in. I'm not going to play on Sunday." And I don't know circumstances behind that, but you could see it on the 18th green where he missed the first putt and didn't set up for his second, didn't set up for his third, fourth, or fifth, and finally just whacked one and it hit the hole and went in for his sixth putt. And boy, I mean, most of us have been there. Not usually in the US Open do we see that. I think some more of the unique things going into this, or taking away from this tournament, was the two guys, number one and number two, are Bryson Dechambeau and Matthew Wolff. If you want to talk about playing the game your way and playing the game consistently with work ethic, with confidence, there's no two better players to promote that in my mind right now. Matthew Wolff has a very unique move right before he starts to take the club away. It is an interesting swing, to say the least. But it is amazing to see the consistency at which he performs with it. And Bryson, I mean, if you don't know anything about Bryson DeChambeau at this point, go look it up, because I mean the guy plays with the same length of shaft for pretty much every club in his bag. He has a unique putter where it is kind of attached to his arm, not literally attached to his arm, but it is against it as he strokes the ball. And I mean, even the hat he wears is unique, where it's not your typical golf or baseball hat. He's had interesting ideas. You see the yardage books for him are twice as thick as any other player. It's, again, you want to talk about promoting different styles, different ways to play the game. No two guys in this world should play golf the same way, in my personal opinion. And you have to find what works for you. You have to do it confidently. You have to do it consistently. And just own it and do it. It's an incredible thing to watch, seeing guys who can be different and confident and successful with it. Arnold Palmer always used to have the saying of swing your swing, and I'm going to take that a step further and say play your game. It is very different for every single person, and it is one of the reasons when I was teaching golf, why I got into it, was everyone can get from the game what you want to get from the game. If you want to be able to get the ball in the air off the tee box and you're perfectly content with nothing more than that, you can do that. And if you want to be the next Tiger Woods, if you work hard enough and if you get it consistently, you can get pretty far in this game. And maybe not be Tiger Woods, that's quite the aspiration, but you can work towards it. And yeah, taking away from this tournament, it was a different US Open feel, despite the fact that the scores were low and the course was tough. It was interesting to see the fairways were running out, and then the greens were a little bit more receptive, especially early on in the tournament. And I loved seeing the unique shot making, especially like you want to watch some incredible shots in this tournament. Go watch and see what Zach Johnson was doing out there. His short game, second to none through his entire career. His wedge game is incredible. One shot that I really enjoyed watching was Hideki Matsuyama, who was chipping past the hole on purpose. He removed the flagstick so that he wouldn't hit it midair, and played it 20-25 feet past the hole and allowed it to come back off the slope and slowly trickle and trickle and trickle down towards the hole, and it finally went in. And you could see players in the same group sitting there watching him as they're both walking towards either the hole or to their next shot, and they just paused and waited for this thing to come down. It was a 30-second shot for something that was only about 15 feet from the hole to begin with. And pretty incredible to see some of the different creativity and unique shots that they were playing. As we look at the NFL, we're going to talk about the off-season and some of the things that have had to change due to COVID-related things. We're going to talk about my top 4 teams for the first 2 weeks, and basically just some of my standout players. Starting off, I just kind of wanted to highlight the off season and some of the things that needed to change. For a while, they couldn't even have administrative staffs in their buildings. They were all sent home, and little things like the draft being completely virtual, whereas coaches and managers were being shown in their homes. That is quite the nice house, by the way, for Coach Kingsbury. And yeah, it's been rather unique. And I kind of wondered how often we were going to see teams hold on to a veteran who may know your playbook, who may know your coaches, who may have a rapport with some of the teammates already, as opposed to bringing in new players or signing a free agent. To me, you're trying to bring in as much cohesiveness as possible into a season where you had a shortened off season. You weren't able to train quite as well as normal. And even the fact that there's no preseason games this year, it's quite a bit different. You did see some teams though, even Tampa Bay, where they brought in Tom Brady, who has to learn a playbook for the first time in 20 years. He obviously had some new coordinators within that time, but it was always under Belichick, so you knew a lot of the things transferred over. And yeah, it was just very interesting to me to see who did what strategies were being deployed, and it led right into week 1, where we got the matchup of Brady versus Breeze, and so the Buccaneers and the Saints played, and the Saints were more of a team where they kept things together. They kept some players. They even brought Breeze back as well as Taysom Hill, and it was pretty much what we expected because of all the turnover with Tampa. They needed a bit more time to be cohesive. I really wish that we would have gotten both of these games later on in the season, after the Bucs had some time to gel, to get things going. And really, you saw a couple of throws where Brady and Evans weren't on the same page. Gronk still getting used to being back playing after taking last year off. And then you saw Breeze just basically go in and play with the boys. He knew his players and the playbooks and coaching staff. It's all the same. And so it was pretty much what we saw, where they kept it close for a little while, and then all of a sudden you just saw, okay, the Saints are who they are. And one of my favorite parts about this game was the fact that this is the first time that we ever saw two 40-plus quarterbacks play against each other in the same game, which I guess they'll break the record again later on this year. And even on the first drive where Brady gets a quarterback sneak, he becomes the oldest player to ever score a touchdown. Pretty cool things when you're talking about these veterans. And something else in week 2 I'd love to highlight would actually be, on the opposite end of things, a rookie quarterback, and Justin Herbert finding out 30 minutes before game time you're actually starting. And not only that, but you're starting against the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. And man, he's shown through his entire college career that no moment was too big for him, and he proved it again. This was not too big. He stepped in and played incredibly well. Really showed the Chargers that they picked the right guy, and they have something to look forward to in the future. Interesting that they did come back and say that T2 was going to be the starter still. It is his team, which I like. Give Herbert some time to learn some more things, to get more comfortable, get his feet wet. You don't need to rush him in, especially when you have a veteran quarterback. And yeah, going more into a few of the different things at the start of the season now for COVID, where coaches on the sidelines are now being made to wear masks or facial shields, and I I still really enjoyed game one where Andy Reid's wearing his face shield, and by about the start of quarter two, you already know he needs some windshield wipers for that thing. He can't see past his play calling sheet, let alone see the field. And you could see him maneuver around 3 or 4 different times, try to find a different way so that this thing could work for him. And then even then this week, where I believe 3 coaches were actually fined for not wearing their masks on the sidelines, and Belichick finding a way to get around the rule where he's wearing his mask upside down and looks more like a villain in a Batman film than a coach on the sidelines. But that's Belichick for you as well. And something funny for me, especially in week one, the muscle memory of coaches. You're wearing a mask covering your mouth, and yet still when you're announcing your play calls to the headset, you cover your mouth with a play calling sheet. And to me, that's just hilarious. It's something that as a coach, if I saw that on a highlight pack, I might even bring that into my weekly meetings. If a player is ever talking about not wanting to run a drill, or we know this already, you can quickly even just show them, like, listen, as much muscle memory as I put in through doing this, that can translate. And it's something you could even just joke about with the player, but no, listen, I mean, it's very obviously something that pays off. If you repeat something and if you do it correctly, it will work for you. It will translate. You won't have to think about it. Just a unique way that I may try to do that way. Going over to my top 4 teams for the first 2 weeks of the season, I want to start with an honorable mention. I really wanted to be able to put the Buffalo Bills in this top 4. I am very impressed with what they're doing. Josh Allen has thrown for 729 yards through 2 games and 0 interceptions with that as well. He is very much a standout performer so far for me this season, and I look forward to seeing more what he will bring. Every game this kid seems to be getting better, and I really love the makeup of that team. And to start with, I'm going to say my number 4 team is the Green Bay Packers. Going back into some off-season stuff, it's shocking to me every year that the Green Bay Packers have never used a first-round pick on a skill position player for Aaron Rodgers. He has never had a wide receiver drafted for him. He has never had a halfback drafted for him, again in the first round. This guy is one of the best quarterbacks of all time, in my opinion, and you just aren't giving him weapons to use. And the one time you draft a skill position player, he happens to play the exact same position as Aaron Rodgers. And to me, I mean, that's just an absolute kick in the teeth. You know you have years left in your contract. You know you're playing at a very high level still, and yet they feel the need to draft another quarterback. That early, it doesn't make sense to me, especially with the quarterbacks that were still available later on. I understand picking best player available on your list. I just don't think that was it. And I hope it works out for them in the long run. But in the short term, it may have also worked out because you put a chip on the shoulder of Aaron Rodgers so big that he may just bring this home for you. So far, he has 604 yards passing. He is completing 67.6% of his passes with 6 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. More importantly, he has only been sacked once for 11 yards. That is huge for him, as very, very often he's found himself on his back and even hurt early on in a season. If they can keep up the kind of protection they've been giving, and if he can stay as mobile to keep plays going, extending them, it's looking very good for the Packers. Another huge piece is the fact that there is Aaron Jones, and he is in fact leading the league in rushing yards so far with 234 rush yards on only 34 attempts. That's the key point to me. When second place is Derrick Henry, and he has 56 attempts for 200 yards. That's just insane numbers. He's also rushed for 3 touchdowns. So, yeah, I haven't really seen a lot from the Packers defense but they're controlling the ball so much that you haven't needed to. I'd like to see them against a let's say one of these top 4 teams, or the Bills, see what they would do against those teams. But so far they've been playing incredibly well. My number 3 team may be somewhat of a surprise to be this low, but it's the defending champs. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. I think the reason I have them this low is simply because their defense seems to be struggling. As much praise as I was giving Herbert for his performance against the Chiefs, I'm also giving them a little bit less of a grade because you have a quarterback who is playing his first career game and on 30 minutes notice, and you can't get in there and disrupt the pass game as much as well, you can't. And at the same point, it's Patrick Mahomes and it's his team, the MVP from 2 seasons ago, the Super Bowl champs. Last season, one play makes up for an entire drive or an entire quarter, and it's incredible to watch their quick strike ability. Hill is not only fast but a great route runner, and it's just tough to match up against them. The addition of Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a mistake by the rest of the league, in my opinion. I can't believe they got him with the last pick in the first round draft. He fits the Chiefs like a glove, and I think he's only touching what they can do with him. They're going to be more confident with him. They're going to give him more responsibilities, and I believe he's capable of handling them. One thing I'm waiting for them to do is maybe run a few stretch plays off the ends. He dominated with those type of runs in college at LSU, and I think that's another element that they may bring soon. But yeah, I would love to put them higher, but the other 2 teams I just feel have more complete teams at this point. It should also be mentioned that the defense did struggle early last year. They did pick it up and obviously won the Super Bowl. So lots of time to improve at this point. The number 2 team on my list so far is the Baltimore Ravens. Getting contributions from everyone at every point. The first two draft picks from this past offseason, Patrick Queen at linebacker and J.K. Dobbins at running back, both have made contributions so far. The defense, again, stout as ever. You have playmakers sitting there with Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters. They had a late cut with Earl Thomas, and I mean that was a bit of a sideshow all off season in the first place. But Deshaun Elliott has come in and played incredibly well, and always an underrated player in my mind. He's come in different sets in the past seasons and played extremely well as a backup. Special teams, he's done really well as well. Going to the offensive side though, last year they ran not only the most yards in the league but most yards in league history, and this year I think they're looking to pass a little bit more. They're also willing to spread the ball out through their I want to call it a four-headed monster now, because with Lamar, Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards, and J.K. Dobbins, they're going to be able to rush the ball as much as they want to, pretty much whenever they want to, and not many teams are going to be able to stop it. But if a team stops it, like has happened in the past 2 years, then you're going to be able to be more comfortable in the pass game and have a bit more of a feeling there. Hollywood Brown, again, is going to be a big threat now that he is fully healthy in his second season. Mark Andrews has been a security blanket now for Lamar. And, I mean, even looking at Lamar's numbers now so far this year is 479 yards, 77.6% passing completion, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And one of the things with Lamar when he's extending plays, I mean, he's been sacked 6 times, and you're going to get some of those. And for such an electric player, you're going to, I mean, if it happens, it happens. Because you know the very next time he may break it and run it for a touchdown for 80 yards. It's just the type of player he is, and I'll take that every time. Again, talking about Patrick Queen, I believe he's led the team in tackles for both games so far this season. Stepping in as a rookie with no preseason games and a shortened training camp, that's incredible. And then, of course, you have Justin Tucker, who is not only the best kicker in the league, but potentially league history. It's just there's no real holes to this roster right now, and it's going to be interesting to see if someone can find one or create one. And there's one team that I have rated higher than them right now. It is the Seattle Seahawks. And I'll start this off by saying I have zero clue how Russell Wilson has never got a single vote for MVP in his entire career. This man leads his team to victory constantly, and if this team was without him, they would not be where they are. Again, you want to talk about holes in a roster, I don't see one. They lost Jadeveon Clowney from last season, and yet they also went out this year and made a big splash by trading for Jamal Adams from the Jets, safety. And first of all, I have no idea why the Jets couldn't make it work with Jamal Adams. To me, if the worst thing about your player is the fact that he wants to win more and wants to win faster, isn't that what we want in the first place? I don't know why you can't make that work with him. But being in Seattle now, I can't imagine a better team for him to go to as far as a fit. He is able to come to the line and not only disrupt the pass game but also the run game. He's a sure tackler. He's able to cover a tight end, especially in man-to-man coverage, and he's also great at playing the deep ball and zone coverage. There's nothing that he can't do. If you want to ask him to do something, he'll do it, and he'll do it well. And the Seahawks and Pete Carroll are going to enjoy disguising where he's coming from, what he's doing, where he's covering. They're just gonna have fun with him in the backfield. And again, same type of an idea as the last Super Bowl team. They had a swagger about them, and that's starting to come back, and you can see it already through 2 games this year. Russell Wilson, again, touching on what he's done so far, is 610 yards for, I believe, 5th place in yards at this point. He has completed a whopping 82.5% of his passes for 9 touchdowns and 1 interception. His 1 interception also went through his receiver's hands and then into the defender, and I can't blame him for that interception at all. So then you look at the fact that he has also been sacked 5 times, but only for 36 yards. So, I mean, again, you want to talk about guys who can extend plays and then make a play. Russell Wilson is more of a quarterback who likes to extend the play behind the line of scrimmage and then find someone downfield, rather than Lamar or even Patrick Mahomes, who takes off once in a while as well. But just, incredible ability to evade the sack, escape the pocket, and find someone downfield who's open. And very rarely will he throw into double coverage or coverage for that matter while escaping, and that's an incredible ability. Also getting some contributions in the rush game by Carson, and the fact that 2 seasons ago that they stole DK Metcalf in the 2nd round. I will never understand how he fell out of the 1st round. I don't know if it was people just trying to not take the gym freak or the combine athlete, just to be afraid if he does not turn into what you think he will. But he looked and acts better than anyone else in that draft class, and he's showing it year in, year out at this point. He's an incredible athlete and a very solid receiver for them. Again, you want to talk about the Seattle Seahawks and what they've done the last 2 years. They play every game hard. They seem to play more big games than any other team in the league, and they consistently show up and consistently outperform. That is a huge reason why they are my top team through 2 weeks this season. I'm again looking forward to seeing them make another run towards the postseason. They play in a stacked division right now too, and yet they still always seem to be the front runners, and I think that's a huge reason why they're up there. It's not only what they've done, but it's the belief within them, and I can't see past that. So thank you so much. That is my show for the evening, and if you enjoyed the conversation this afternoon or this evening, please like and subscribe my videos. You will see these once a week as I put these out for you. And again, I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you.